welcome back for this week's episode. And today we're going to start talking about something that I feel is always talked about, but no one ever gives you practical steps for. So we talk a lot about toxic burden, toxic load. You hear those terms tossed around. We've got to reduce them. We've got to improve our toxic load that will help our overall health. But at the end of the day, how do you actually do that, right? And I would be a proponent of saying it's not chasing down things like detoxes and things like that, although
Yeah.
detox is part of that. Our bodies were designed for that. So, Adrienne, I would love you to jump in here and kind of give me your 2 cents on this, but it drives me nuts when I hear people talk about this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so this is when working with women and looking at hormones. This is a big factor in what's creating these imbalances, right? And but then again, there's that buzzword, like you said, like detoxes, and it's really not doing when we talk about food detoxes, juice detoxes, we're actually creating, yeah, more problems and not actually detoxing our body at the end of the day. It's something I'm really passionate about. And quite frankly, if your body's not getting rid of the junk or if it's full of junk, it's not going to
Yeah.
optimally function. So, what
Yes.
is your number one
Number one.
thing?
Okay. So before I give you number one, I just have to say, I love that you brought up the hormone piece of this, right? Because people think, oh, I have a hormone imbalance and I have to detox.
Mm.
But hormones are so many things, right? They're communication for our body. And so we have to make the right amount, we have to send them to the right place. They have to receive that signal, and then we have to be able to break them down and get them out of our body. And so
Yeah.
we do see these imbalances. So, number one thing that I see in almost every woman, particularly in my perimenopause and my postmenopausal population, is sleep issues. And so I think things like chronic stress can lead to poor sleep, not getting that sunlight exposure in the morning, and all of those things can disrupt our sleep cycles at night. Insulin sensitivity issues is another one, another big one I see. And the problem with that is our body does all of its repairing at night. So that deep sleep time is when our body goes through all the things in our body and pulls out what it doesn't need anymore. It does repairing of DNA that might be damaged, which happens to us all the time, right? Cells are being made, they're having damage done, they're breaking down, we're making new cells. And most of that happens at night when we're sleeping. So prioritizing sleep is a number one, no negotiation. You must have that in order to detox well.
No, and I think it's really funny because I think sleep is the first thing a lot of us sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
And so it's funny we're talking detoxing, but sleep just has so many layers to our health, and especially with detoxing is so big. Because when we start to look at our detox pathways, right?
Yes.
So sweating, pooping, things like that, if we're all ultimately not sleeping, the rest of our body's not going to function properly when we're awake. So with that, I'm going to lead into the detox pathways, if that's okay, Jenny.
Yeah. So number two,
Okay.
your detox pathways, I would
Number two,
totally
I
agree.
would say, are detox pathways. These are the two, I think, when we look at our seven, we have a lot of managing external factors. These are more of our internal factors, right? Or the more physiological ones. So, really making sure, like you said, we have all these things in our body and we need to get rid of them. And so, how are we getting rid of them? And my two biggest ones are sweating and pooping. You just, if your body is not letting go of things or actually letting go of things, it is sitting in there. And so, one of the things that people actually don't realize, and when I was younger, I thought was really, it was cool not to sweat, right? You didn't want to be the sweaty person
Yeah.
in gym class waiting. But as I've gotten older and as I've worked in women's health and learned more about detoxification, if you aren't sweating, that means your detox pathways are clogged up. So you really want to prioritize getting a good sweat in, whether that's through a workout or a sauna and making sure you're hydrated enough to sweat and things like that. And then when we also, not the even less glamorous than the sweating is the pooping, being constipated, or when we're constipated, we're holding on to those toxins. So making sure that when we have those daily bowel movements, or we're having those daily bowel movements to release things. Do you see this, Jenny, a lot?
Well, I'm laughing out loud because my 6-year-old likes to walk through the house going, my mom talks about poop. My mom talks about poop because that's what
Oh,
6-year-old boys are into, right?
yeah.
And he gets the biggest kick out of the fact that poop is something I talk about at work all the time. So important, right? And we see so many kids and women
Yeah.
constipated, right? And constipation, if you're wondering, would be considered less than one bowel movement a day. Ideally, you really want to be having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day if you're moving things through as you're eating, right? So depending on how many meals you eat, how much fiber you're having, you should be having significant bowel movements. And that is one of the ways that your body collects all those toxins, collects those discarded hormones, and gets them out of your body. So important. But yeah, my mom talks about poop. It's something
I
I do twice a day
actually
at
love that
my house.
because here's the thing, and it's something I didn't realize. And so, moms, if you're listening, kids don't know what their poop should look like. Kids don't know if their poop should be soft or if it should be hard, if it should be pellets. And so, talking about foods is actually
Yeah.
quite important to
For
your
sure.
kids so they know what they're looking for and they know what's off and what's not, especially as they get older. Because how many of us actually knew what our poop was supposed to look like and what's normal, not even as adults?
Yeah. He very proudly told his pediatrician in his well check this month that he poops 1 to 2 times a day, and that's good. And he was very
That's
proud of that.
awesome.
He knew. And so I think to your point, you're right. It's not something I grew up learning, and it's certainly not something most kids know a lot about. But as adults, that is so important for us and for our families.
Yeah, and again, moms, if you're out there listening, it's a good wellness check for your kid. Is your kid pooping once a day? Do you know? Because once they get old enough, we lose track of that.
And you don't have to wipe it anymore. You're not worried about
Yep.
it. Yep, for sure. Awesome. And so I think along with that line, and we're going to get now into things that are more external, but having enough water to make stool move, and there are other things as
Mhm.
well. But for sweat and for stool, I would say my next priority for detoxing is making sure that one, we're getting enough water, and then two, that we're looking at the source of our water. Filtered water, I think some people think, oh, that's so bougie, but the reality is what's in our tap water is gross. And where you live matters for that. You can actually go on EWG
Yeah.
website and look at what your water is locally. Some places are going to be way worse than others, but you don't want to be taking in a bunch of toxins when the whole point of water, and our bodies are made up of so much water, is to help our bodies do what it's supposed to do best. And part of that is detox. And if we're putting more toxins in, it's just going to make that even trickier.
Yeah, and as you say that, we talk about what we put in our bodies. So the next biggest thing, or the that's probably the next biggest thing, is food, right? And so food is so hard, right? Because groceries are expensive, and you're trying to figure out what to do. But really, I think at the end of the day, if you're prioritizing whole and processed foods, that's a good place to start. And then back to EWG is a great resource across the board. So they also have the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15, and that can kind of help you tease out what produce you should be buying organic and what's less important to buy organic, just so that you're not breaking the bank across the board, but you can kind of choose, hey, I know apples are heavily covered in pesticides. Let's really prioritize on getting organic apples.
Yeah.
We want our food to serve our body and not hurt our body. So eating those whole foods, and a lot of the foods have detoxifying properties to them as well.
Yeah, 100%, right? I think we totally underestimate. People come in on all kinds of supplement routines, having bought all kinds of crazy gimmicky products. When at the end of the day, there are so many vegetables and herbs that if we're cooking with them, we are naturally providing those detox responsibilities to our body. And so it doesn't have to be this gimmicky thing. And for kids in particular, if we can get them eating healthy, whole foods, we've done a lot of good to support their detox pathways.
And as you say that, when we look at the American population, most people are deficient in fiber, right?
Right.
And so that slows down those detox pathways. And so when we're looking at our food and eating those whole foods, we really want to try to hit that more fiber. And then it's going to serve you in so many other ways with the micronutrients and things as well. But if we're just looking at it from a fiber perspective, it's going to do a whole lot of good for your body.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I feel like food and water, we've hit on that. Those are things we're using to nourish, and we want to make sure they're good quality sources and we're being conscious about what we're taking in. That doesn't mean ever not eating the other things. It's just being aware and intentional about those choices we take. And I think that goes into the next one, which in my mind is managing stress, right? Because if you
Yeah.
start to stress about every source of water, every source of food, all the things that you're doing every day, what you might be exposed to, that stress level just goes like this. And that is so bad for our bodies as well, right? Dysregulating our nervous system is going to have an impact on things like leaky gut and hormone regulation.
Mhm.
It's going to impact our sleep, which is then going to impact our detox again. And so having an awareness of our stress level, and whether that's through your own check-ins and maybe you have that in tuneness with your body, or maybe it's things like using an Apple Watch or an Aura Ring or something like that, which is going to give you feedback on those things and where you are at. And then starting to implement strategies to bring it down. So it's one thing to know, and that's important, but then we have to start to work through how are you going to regulate that? And so a few months ago, we did a podcast on breath work. So if you're not familiar or you're thinking, what other tools can I use? That's a great place to start. I'm going to talk about some simple strategies you can use today. But I find that most people don't even know how to activate their parasympathetic nervous system. And that's a big one, right? So that breath work, nervous system regulation, time in nature, there's lots of different ways to do it, but most of us live with our nervous system on high all the time. And that's such an impact to our ability to detox as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think with sleep, those are two things that we can do all the health things, but if those two things fly under the radar and we don't address them, it's really going to impact everything.
Yeah. And no matter how hard we work on all these other things, if we haven't addressed those, I think we're not going to see the full potential effect as well. Yeah. All right. So that's 5. I think I've got one more left in there. What about you? What would be your
I
next?
have one more too. Actually,
Okay.
this one plays into stress because once you start looking at this, you can stress your
Yes. Yes.
The next one I would say is household products and personal care products.
Okay.
Oh boy. I feel like this is one that once you start looking at, you will stress yourself out a little bit. So I'm going to tell you to go ahead and take a deep breath when you start looking and just switch things out as you run out, right? But we really want to look at our products for synthetic fragrances, parabens, never say it, phthalates, and choose cleaner alternatives because these often mimic our hormones and disrupt our hormonal balance, and it can also affect our gut and things like that. And so, what one of my favorite ways to do it is there are apps that you can scan your products, although again, I get scan happy once I see them and it gets a little scary because you're like, oh wait, everything might be not so great. EWG's app is actually one of my favorites. We're not sponsored by them
Yes.
because we keep saying it.
I think one of my concerns with them, to your point, is they do have sponsored products, right? So you just have to be
Yes.
knowledgeable and intentional and know that there might be things that they're still valid and they're still better than
Yeah.
the traditional things, but could potentially have bought their way up that list a little bit. So,
Yeah, and it's actually, I personally just had a baby and have been checking products, and there's been one or two things on there that are a little bit eyebrow raisers for me. And I'm like,
sure.
is it
Yeah.
really that clean?
Yeah.
But it's just a good quick check to be like,
Sure.
okay, what's in there? There's another one called Think Dirty.
Yeah.
That's a good one too. Yucca, I can never say it right, is more food-based, but that's also a great app.
Yep.
But again,
Hobby approved would be the fourth one that I would say.
oh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
have to check it out.
But I think you don't have to keep all 4 and scan everything, right?
No.
Find something that works for your flow and just start checking.
And again, once you run out of something, maybe look and be like, okay, is there a cleaner alternative out there for what I have? And just slowly start making those changes. When we also look at home environment, okay, I don't know if you've ever heard this term, Jenny, but have you heard of burping your house?
No, but
I heard it on a podcast once.
I could see where that would fit.
To burp your house is to open all the windows and air and let all the dirty air out and just let that fresh air come in, release the toxins that are in your home and bring in that fresh air. So when I actually had learned that term, someone was referring to spring cleaning and they lived in somewhere cold. They said, oh, I burnt my house every spring by opening the doors and releasing the chemicals from the heater and things like that. So
Sure.
that's a simple way too.
Yeah. And I love that, right? Because again, we can't go down this rabbit hole, but synthetic fibers in our furniture, flame
Yes.
retardants that are put on a lot of our furniture, commercial cleaners that are used to keep things clean, all of those things can contribute to a poor air quality. And if we're breathing those things in and out, burping your house is one good way. I think another good one is having good plants in there, right? Like our plants exchange that crappy air and give us fresh quality air, and they get rid of a lot of our toxins that way as well. Snake plants are great because I'm a plant person, but I can keep those alive. So they live in my house quite well. Or how to
That's
take
a great one too. And I feel like there's something to be said when you look at plants in your house for your mental health and that nervous system regulation and managing the stress.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that. And I feel like that's a great one. I probably would have gone that route with my last one as well. But since you used that one, I'm going to give you one more. And it was just maybe a subcategory underneath this. But the other thing is just about being smart about all these forever chemicals and particularly plastics, right? So we know that plastics don't break down super well in our environment. And the same is true in our body. They stay in there for a very long time. The good news is they recently just started doing some research showing that we can actually start to move those things out, which before they didn't really think we could. So how do we do that? By opening these detox pathways and all the things we've talked about so far. But when it comes to plastics, opting for glass or stainless steel whenever possible is super important. Avoiding those plastic water bottles. They're not great for the environment, but they're also terrible for our bodies. Not microwaving anything in plastic or using anything where hot touches plastic, right? Because that's going to increase that leaching into whatever it is, into our food, into the environment, into our drinks, things like that, so that we can minimize that exposure of those forever chemicals and plastics that are going to stay in our body. That would be my last one, just as more of a prevention.
I feel like that's a great one. And I think when I started my wellness journey, that was actually the first one I did was the plastic food containers to glass, just because you're hitting the double with consuming and not work, just making sure you're not consuming that plastic. And so
Yeah.
I would encourage you to, if you're looking for a jumping off point, sometimes just getting the glass containers are just an easy, you get them at Costco. Costco has them sometimes and swap them out. And it's something to be like, okay, at least I'm not consuming it in my food.
Yeah. I love that so much. I have a dear friend and former client who she used to come with her plastic water bottle every time, right? And so when we started talking about like how do you detox your body and she was having some issues with that, I was like, here's a simple one. Stop with those, right? It'll save you money. Here's cute ones instead. So I introduced her to the brand Awala, which I love.
Oh, yeah.
And so she started getting a wallet, and now it's so great. She maybe every 6 months or so will bring me a new one. She'll be like, I saw this one and I thought of you, right? Like the design is perfect. So it's become her new accessory. But I was so proud of her for making that switch because I knew that's a big one, just to stop that process and eliminate some of the toxins from your body as well.
And to your point, getting like my husband laughs at me. I never go anywhere without my Stanley cup. It's
Yep.
blurred. But also, I'm drinking more, right? Like you look at the size of the little plastic water bottle, you have more. And then it's also a treat myself thing. Like when I get my new Stanley after I gave birth, I was like, I need a new Stanley. It's time. I need to drink more water. I went and got myself a new Stanley and it was a little treat myself moment. So to your point, like having that new accessory is fun too.
It sure is. Yeah. And way more functional and effective than a new pair of earrings, right?
Yes, totally.
I love that. Good. So I think those were 7 great places to get started. We didn't want to overwhelm you, but hopefully this just gives you a very basic checklist to start to look at. And maybe how do you use this? Maybe look at one a week, right? Start with just prioritizing sleep this week and thinking about your sleep habits and what that looks like, and then move on to the next one, or spend a couple weeks if you feel like you really struggle there. But move through these things that are really basic and foundational. And then if you're still struggling, or if you get stuck in any of these and you don't know how to progress, that's what we're here for. Adrienne and I are both willing and ready to work with you guys. Adrienne's just back from maternity leave, and I'm so excited to have her. So we're accepting new clients. And so we'd love to have you, love to help you work through these detoxes before we do anything crazy, but really to get you feeling better, which is usually why people head down this path in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always so fun talking about this stuff. So I'm
For
glad to
sure.
be back.
Yeah. All right. Until next time, have a great day.